This is an introduction to chemical engineering and an introduction to the chemical engineering unit in engineering principles. Chemical engineers take raw materials and transform them into usable products. And we try to do this in a way that is the most energy efficient, least wasteful, and most environmentally responsible way, and also the most economical way. The tools that engineers use to do this, there are three basic processes or operations that chemical engineers use, and that is mixing, separation, and reaction. If I can mix things together, separate things that I don't need together, and react things, I can make just about anything. In order to do that, there are some other operations that might be necessary. I may need to have energy input. I may need to have heating or cooling. Or I may need to move material. Transport material. So we can think of each of these processes by relating this to things that you might see in your kitchen. Let's talk about how we would make something that you may be familiar with. Let's talk about how we could make cookies. So when we're making cookies, we take ingredients, things like maybe eggs, I may need butter and sugar, and maybe I'm taking some flavoring. I'll choose vanilla. I also may need to use flour, salt, and maybe something like baking powder for leavening. All of these things we call raw materials. Because they haven't gone through our process yet. Now the first thing that you do when you make cookies is you're going to start mixing stuff together. What I'm drawing here is what engineers use, what chemical engineers use, or one thing that they use to understand what's going on in a process, and it's called a process flow diagram, or PFD for short. So when I'm mixing things together, I don't want to throw whole eggs into my my cookies. Eggshells would be nasty. So whole eggs would require a little bit more processing. And I'm going to draw shapes that would represent operations or units in the process. And for my whole eggs, I'm going to throw those into a separator. So the whole eggs go in, and I'm going to take out eggshells. And then I'm going to take out eggs. Usable part of my eggs. Now I can further process those eggs and use those. When we make eggs, we usually mix together butter, sugar, and vanilla. We mix the wet ingredients together and we mix the dry ingredients together, and then we put it all together to make the final cookie dough. So I'm going to show that this butter and sugar mixture are going to go into, or butter, sugar, and vanilla are going to go into this mixer. And I'll show a little paddle that shows that's a mixer. So I'll put my eggs in there, and the butter's going to go in there, and the sugar, and the vanilla. So one way to tell that something's a mixer is there are multiple things coming in and only one stream coming out. I also have another mixer down here. This would be for my dry ingredients. But because I know this is a mixer, I'm going to draw it the same way. So I'll take the flour, salt, and baking powder, and all of that will go into there. Finally, I want to mix the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients together. So I'll take my wet ingredients and put it into another mixer, and the output of my dry ingredients will also go into this mixer. So now I have cookie dough coming out of my final mixer here. And maybe I want to make cookie shapes. So I'll have some kind of unit here that's a shaper. And my dough from my mixer will come into this shaper. And out one side I'll get raw cookie shapes. And out of the other side I'll get scraps. Now these raw dough scraps, we don't want to waste that. That's usable cookie dough. So we could send this back up into the mixer to be mixed in with more dough. So this we would call a recycle. Stream. That way we don't waste any cookie dough that we could still use. So let's do a little bit of labeling. We're going to call this a separator. That's my egg separator. This is a mixer, my wet ingredient mixer, and this is another mixer, my dry ingredient mixer, and I have a third mixer, my dough mixer. After the cookie shapes, I would take, in my kitchen, after I've shaped my cookies, I would take and put them in an oven. And when we add heat, or we do something to process raw materials so that a reaction takes place, I call this a reactor. Really, it's an oven. And I'm going to show here that I'm adding heat to get my reaction to take place. And what comes out after my reactor are cookies. My final baked product cookies. So this is my finished product. And now we've taken a cookie making process and shown what a simple process flow diagram would look like. It shows the materials coming in, what happens to those materials, the flow of the materials as it goes through the process, and identifies what the final product is. Here is a cleaned up version of the process flow diagram of our cookie process. Things to note: make sure that you understand that each process, that when we're making anything, has mixers, and we can see the mixer here, 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 processes also have separators. We have a separator here separating our eggshells from our eggs, and really this shaper could be considered a separator as well. Things coming, and then also a reactor in our process. Our oven is our reactor, showing heat coming into the oven. Also shown on the process flow diagram are any raw materials coming in. Those are our ingredients that we are using to make our product. Our finished product, of course, which is our cookies. Anything that is recycled within the process or comes back and is processed again through the process. Or any waste streams, anything coming out that we don't use and that we need to either dispose of or find another use for. So that's a basic process flow diagram.